If you're looking to catch another good mystery with our lady detectives in Botswana, then today's book just might be for you. Today I will be covering Morality for Beautiful Girls by Alexander McCall Smith. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're looking at the third book in the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. I've been contemplating exactly how I want to cover each of these books, especially since I think the things I like about each of these books is predominantly going to be the same. Therefore, who I would recommend each of these books for and who I wouldn't recommend them for are going to generally be the same for each video. So I think it's important that I do go ahead and give a pretty decent summary of the books. I don't always give a really detailed summary of the books that I read and review, which means that I will give some spoilers away, especially when it deals with the relationship between our main characters. I won't have too many spoilers for the actual cases that she solves. Those resolutions, unless I feel like I need to share what the conclusion is to help explain the book better, I'll leave those to the people that choose to read the books. Because even though sometimes the resolutions of those mysteries and those cases are important for the larger story that's being told, usually, just like any case in any series like this, it's pretty standalone and it does not have a dramatic impact on the detectives. As you may recall, in the previous two books, Precious and her assistant, Mama Makutsi or Grace, they had successfully started the agency, except they weren't getting a lot of clients, and Precious then got engaged to Mr. JLB Matakoni. And because of that engagement and the repair shop that he already owns, they decide in this book they're going to combine their two businesses into one place, specifically at the auto shop, so that she can rent out the space that she had originally for the agency. On top of that, it is actually a way for her to keep Grace employed, because this way she can give her a slight raise in pay rate, but also increase what she does responsibility-wise. We've already talked about how she's going to become an assistant detective, or as she will be adamant about saying, an associate detective, and she can become a little bit of a manager of the shop. Because one of the things that they quickly discover when they get to the shop is that Mr. JLB Matakoni has fallen behind significantly in a lot of his paperwork, and it's not really like him. He's not exactly someone that spends all his time pushing papers, but he tends to be pretty organized, and it seems to be symptoms of something much bigger than just being a little behind on his work. And that actually becomes a big plot in this story, and that is that Mr. JLB Matakoni is clearly suffering from depression. And so Precious is going to have to find a way to try to get him to acknowledge that and try to get him to get some kind of treatment. He refuses to see a doctor. He actually is going to leave his shop and he's going to go out to some land that he owns out in the country, and he's just going to become really listless and lethargic and uninterested in being involved in anything. And this is of course very unsettling to Precious, because she still hopes to marry him, and that's unsettling to see anyone that you care about to have problems like that. And so that becomes a big part of this. She's actually going to go to the orphanage. As you recall, Patakone has this really close relationship with Mr. JLB Matakone, and she actually has a slightly antagonistic relationship, at least at times, with Precious. That's because she's really good at getting stuff for the orphanage, and that includes getting a lot of work out of Mr. JLB Matakone. But because of this close relationship, she confides in her, and she's actually going to help Precious to get Mr. JLB Matakone the treatment that he needs. But that will be a big part of the novel, is trying to get him that treatment and trying to figure out how he can get better and how he can get the medication and any other solutions that could help him as he deals with this new condition. So the big plot points that you need to know from this book, as it deals with everyone's relationships, as we're looking at the main characters and not at the actual cases, is of course helping Mr. JLB Matakone. And as they move into this new space, Grace has to now navigate her relationship with Mr. JLB Matakone's two apprentices, who you discover do not get along with her very well, especially the older of the two, and he will go on to play a key figure. Matter of fact, they're not even both named in this book. I think the older one, Charlie, is maybe named, but the younger one, he will not be named for several books after this. And so the relationship between them is going to be a big part of not just this book, but it actually goes on to be a big part of the rest of the series, as far as I know. And so that's going to be another one of the relationship dynamics that is being explored in this book. Dr. Moffat, who you have heard of before in the past, he's going to play a bigger role in this, because he's going to be the one that helps Mr. JLB Matakone, and he goes on to have a recurring role in this series. He's not in every book, and he doesn't usually play a very big role, but he is going to be a close friend to Precious, and it's going to be that relationship that she relies on, especially when it comes to getting medical advice, not just for herself, but for the cases that she is doing. And he continues to play a sparse but significant role. So the main things that you need to know about the big plot lines that are not case specific in this book. There are two big cases that she works on in this book. And the first one comes from this generic government man. He's never named. He comes to the office and he says that he has a very discreet case that he needs Precious to take on. He has a winner of a beauty pageant who had just been dethroned because she had been caught shoplifting. And so for that reason, he is concerned about the rest of the finalists, just in case any of them have some skeletons in their closet that he would like to see resolved. So he hires her to go and essentially do a background check, and really a character check is the big thing she wants to do on the remaining contestants, to see that whoever they give the crown to make sure that they do not have a similar issues they had with this one. And the other big case that she takes on deals with a wealthy man who comes to Precious and says that he feels that there is some kind of threat to his family. He thinks that they had been poisoned in the past, and so Precious is going to go live on the farm for a few days and try to observe everything that she can, just in case there is some kind of threat to their lives, to see what has caused these people to become sick, to see if there was some kind of poisoning. And of course, she will resolve that case as well. I'll leave it up to you to see exactly how she resolves that and what the conclusion of that is. So those are the two big cases that take place in this book. And then there are a few other little cases that are important, especially as you deal with the orphanage and just their everyday lives. But those are the biggest cases. So that is Morality for Beautiful Girls. And that brings us back to the same point that I've made on all the videos about this series, and that is, I love this series. It is so good. I do enjoy the mysteries that she's solving, no matter how big or small they are. I like her approach. I like listening to the way she's thinking about things. But above all, I find the way that she's constantly reflecting on Botswana and the values of Botswana and the value of the Botswanan people. I just find it to be a fascinating look into not just the thought process of this detective, but of a whole culture. That also leaves me with the concern that I've had about the whole series, and that is that I'm not sure how great of a representation this is, but I leave that up to the Botswanan people to tell me otherwise. I do know that Alexander McCall Smith spent some time in Africa, so hopefully it is a fair representation. I think that it is a kind representation of a people. I think that Precious has great feelings towards her country, towards the people around her, and she's a manifestation of that. That doesn't mean that everyone that she interacts with is as kind-hearted as her, but that's kind of the point, is to show how great a country is, to show some of its best people. I think that's what she does, is she reflects some of the best attributes of this country. Because it's the third book in the series, I would not recommend this for anyone that hasn't read the first two books in the series, but I would say if you've read the first two books in the series, I think you're going to enjoy this book too. It has much of what you're going to find in the first two books. You are continuing to set the stage for the life of Precious and everyone else around her, but you're also pretty established at this point. Being in the third book, you know most of the main characters. There are a few more people that will continue to become important, but you know who the big three characters are in Precious, Grace, and Mr. JLB Matakoni. And I think that by this point, you get a pretty good idea of exactly what their characters are like and the way they approach not just their business in terms of the detective work or the auto shop, but just in terms of how they deal with the world around them. Please let me know what you think about this book. And again, what you think about the series as a whole. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. Until next time, keep those pages turning.